When Clara begged for a fake boyfriend to survive one night, she never imagined a millionaire was listening. What he did next would change everything she believed about love and second chances forever. The Whitmore mansion kitchen smelled of fresh rosemary when Clara felt her world beginning to crumble. She was 28, hands covered in flour, phone pressed against her ear while fighting back tears that threatened to ruin the risotto she had been preparing for 40 minutes. On the other end of the line, Megan's voice carried the same indignation Clara felt. "He did what?" her best friend exclaimed. "Derek showed up after 2 years demanding you go with him to your cousin's wedding?" "It's worse." Clara lowered her voice, aware anyone could walk into that kitchen. "He called my Aunt Patricia, told her we'd gotten back together. My aunt already told the entire family. She posted in the group chat that Derek and I had reconciled, that it was the best news of the year. But that's a complete lie." "Of course it is. But now if I don't show up with him tomorrow, I'll look like the crazy woman who invented a boyfriend. And if I show up alone, my aunt will spend the entire night reminding me I'm the only single woman in the family, that I'm already 28, that my mother will die without meeting grandchildren." Clara's voice broke. It wasn't just the wedding. It wasn't just Derek. It was everything together, weighing on her shoulders like a mountain growing every day. Waking at 5 in the morning, spending 12 hours cooking for people who barely looked at her, going home exhausted to care for her sick mother, still having to endure constant humiliation from a family that saw her as a failure. "Clara, listen carefully." Megan's voice became firm. "You cannot go with Derek. That guy made your life a nightmare for 3 years. He controlled you, isolated you from friends, made you believe you were nothing without him. Remember how you were when you finally left him. Destroyed, not eating, not sleeping. It took me months to help you recover. I know, Megan, believe me." "Then why are you even considering this?" "Because I don't have options." Clara leaned against the cold marble counter. "I need a boyfriend by tomorrow. Someone to show my family I'm not a disaster. To shut Derek up, but I have no one. I don't have a life outside this kitchen and the hospital where my mother gets tests done every week." Tears began flowing silently down her flour-dusted cheeks. "I need a boyfriend by tomorrow," she repeated in a whisper, "and I have no idea how to escape this without losing my dignity." What Clara didn't know was that she wasn't alone. Nathan Mercer had entered the kitchen looking for water. At 36, he was CEO of Mercer Holdings, one of the country's largest business conglomerates, finalizing a billion-dollar merger with Whitmore Construction. He'd stopped at the doorway when he heard that choked voice, not wanting to interrupt a private conversation. "I need a boyfriend by tomorrow." There was so much pain in that phrase. Nathan knew that tone well. He'd heard it in his own voice years ago, when he was a poor teenager struggling to survive. When his father died in a construction accident and his mother cleaned houses for wealthy families to pay rent, he observed the woman from the corridor shadows. Dark brown hair in a practical braid, hands working automatically while she talked, white uniform stained from hours of hard work. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with expensive makeup. The rare beauty of someone who works with genuine passion, who finds dignity in honest effort. And she was crying in a way that made something inside him contract painfully. Nathan made a decision that defied all business logic he knew. He cleared his throat softly. Clara turned so quickly she almost knocked the risotto off the stove. Her eyes widened, seeing the man at the entrance. She recognized him instantly. The businessman who'd arrived for the important meeting with the Whitmores. Mrs. Whitmore had mentioned him with almost religious reverence. Nathan Mercer, from Mercer Holdings, an extremely powerful man. "I'm sorry," Clara said quickly, wiping tears with her hand. "I didn't know anyone was here. Do you need something, sir? I need you to listen to me, and I need you not to say no before thinking about what I'm going to propose." Clara frowned, confused. "I heard your conversation. It wasn't my intention, but I heard everything." Nathan stepped closer, maintaining respectful distance. "You need a boyfriend by tomorrow, someone to accompany you to a wedding and help you face a problematic ex." Heat rose up Clara's neck to her cheeks. "Sir, that was a private conversation." "I know, I apologize, but I have a proposal that might interest you." Clara stared at him with disbelief and caution. This man, with his suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her salary, was really standing there talking to her. The cook nobody looked at twice? What kind of proposal? "I could be your boyfriend tomorrow." The silence was so dense, Clara could hear the risotto bubbling behind her. "What?" "Listen before you think I've lost my mind." Nathan raised his hands. I'm not proposing anything inappropriate, just genuine help. You need someone to make you feel safe, to show your family you're perfectly fine without that ex. I can be that person. No strange commitments, just true help from one human being to another. Why? The question escaped before Clara could stop it. Why would a man like you help a cook you don't know? Nathan looked directly into her eyes, and Clara saw something unexpected. Deep understanding. Recognition of shared pain. Because I know what it feels like, he answered simply. I know what it's like to desperately need help and have no one available. I've been in dark places where the only way out seemed impossible. Clara felt a knot forming in her throat. You don't know me. I don't, but I recognize pain when I see it, and I recognize extraordinary strength. He pointed to the risotto continuing to cook perfectly. You were crying while cooking, and your dish remains impeccable. That requires iron discipline. I've known executives who fall apart under much less pressure. Clara didn't know how to respond. No one had ever described her work that way. And what do you get out of this? Honestly, I'm not sure. Nathan smiled genuinely. Maybe the satisfaction of helping someone who deserves it. Maybe I'm tired of endless meetings and a lively wedding sounds refreshing. Despite herself, Clara felt a small smile forming. You're completely crazy. Probably. Does that mean you accept? Clara observed this stranger offering exactly what she needed. Every survival instinct screamed to reject the offer. Her mother had always warned about men who seemed too good, but she was genuinely desperate, and there was something in Nathan's eyes, in the respectful way he looked at her, that quietly told her she could trust him, at least for that night. The wedding is at 6 tomorrow, Crystal Grand Hotel. Perfect. Can I pick you up at 5? I don't live in a place someone like you would normally visit. Give me the address. I've lived in places that would probably surprise you. Clara gave the address of the small apartment she shared with her sick mother. She expected to see regret in his eyes, but Nathan just nodded calmly. One more thing, Clara said. My family can't know who you really are. If they see Nathan Mercer, the millionaire, they'll think I'm lying or crazy. Then who do you want me to be? Just an ordinary man who works at something simple. Something my family can believe I'd meet. What if I say I work in imports? Vague enough, but respectable. Imports works. Then tomorrow I'll be Nathan, the boyfriend who works in imports. He paused. And you'll be Clara, the extraordinary woman who deserves much more than life has offered. Before Clara could respond, Nathan disappeared through the door, leaving her with her perfect risotto, her racing heart, and the strange feeling she'd boarded an unknown train with no idea where it would take her. That night, Clara sat on her mother's bed. Dorothy was awake as always, insomnia being one of many cruel side effects of the diabetes consuming her body. At 57, she looked older, her face marked by decades of hard work. Why do you have that strange look, daughter? I met someone today, Mom. A man. He's going to accompany me to Stephanie's wedding tomorrow. And Derek? Derek can go to hell. I'm not letting that man control my life ever again. I found someone better. Better how? Clara thought about how Nathan had looked at her, how he'd seen her pain and strength in the same instant, how he'd offered help without asking anything in return. Better in absolutely everything. He's different from any man I've ever known. He looks at me as if I really matter. Dorothy smiled tiredly. Then this young man has good taste. You've always mattered. The world just can't always see it clearly. Clara kissed her mother's forehead, promising herself that whatever happened tomorrow, she wouldn't allow anyone to make her feel inferior ever again. The wedding day dawned with a crystal blue sky. Clara tried on her only presentable dress 4 times, changed shoes 3 times, put her hair up and down so many times that Megan threatened to tie her to a chair. When the doorbell rang, Clara felt her heart stop. It's him. If he's really a dangerous killer, at least I'll die knowing you were right, Megan joked, walking to the door. But when she opened it, the joke died on her lips. Nathan stood in the narrow hallway, dressed in a discreet dark grey suit, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers, not expensive roses. Simple, honest flowers, beautiful in their natural simplicity. Good afternoon. Is Clara ready? Clara appeared behind Megan, wearing an emerald green dress that had been her mother's, hair falling in dark waves over her shoulders. You look absolutely beautiful, Nathan said, and it sounded like an objective statement of fact. Thank you. You also look very good. More normal, Nathan laughed. That was the objective. He extended the flowers. I saw them on the way and thought of you, simple but special. Megan finally found her voice. I'm Megan, the best friend. If you hurt Clara, I have contacts who can make you disappear. Completely fair, Nathan nodded seriously. Best friends have every right to make protective threats. What are your real intentions with my friend? To make her feel safe tonight. Show her family she's an incredible woman, and if the ex shows up, remind him Clara is no longer available for his manipulations. After a long moment, Megan nodded. I like you, but the threats still apply. Clara said goodbye to her mother, then left with Nathan. Instead of the luxurious Mercedes she'd expected, an ordinary grey sedan waited at the curb. More appropriate for the occasion, Nathan explained, opening the door. We don't want questions about how an imports employee affords a luxury car. During the drive, they created their relationship story. 6 months together. Met at a coffee shop when he spilled coffee on his papers and she offered napkins. He worked at a small import company, loved homemade food, and if they ask why I never mentioned you, you wanted to be sure it was real before introducing me. After Derek, you didn't want to rush. Clara was impressed. That's surprisingly convincing. Experience in creating persuasive narratives, for business negotiations only, nothing illegal. Nathan stopped at a red light and turned to face her. The part where I believe you deserve someone who treats you well, where I think you're extraordinary for everything you face every day. That part is completely true. Clara held his gaze, feeling something warm spreading through her chest. Then the light changed, but the warmth remained the entire journey. The Crystal Grand Hotel ballroom gleamed with sophisticated elegance. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like imprisoned constellations. Tables decorated with elaborate arrangements, costing more than Clara's monthly salary. She squeezed Nathan's arm, desperately trying to breathe normally. Calm down. Everything will be fine, he murmured. They're ordinary people who sweat, snore, and have flaws. Money doesn't make them superior. Despite her nerves, Clara smiled. Thanks for that sophisticated image. Now smile confidently. Someone extremely interested is approaching at 3 o'clock. Clara turned and felt her smile freeze. Aunt Patricia was coming with the speed of a gossip-guided missile, dragging her silent husband behind. Clara, dear. Patricia's shrill voice carried false sweetness. What a surprise. I thought you'd be with Derek. Derek lied, Aunt. We broke up 2 years ago. No intention of reconciling. This is my boyfriend, Nathan. Patricia's calculating eyes fixed on Nathan. A pleasure, he said, extending his hand. Clara has told me about you. Curious, she never mentioned having a boyfriend. She wanted to be sure our relationship was serious first. After Derek, she wanted to be cautious. Clara almost choked. Nathan had subtly reminded Patricia that Derek had been a disaster. Patricia narrowed her eyes. What do you do professionally? Imports. A small but stable company. Disappointment crossed Patricia's face. I see. Well, enjoy the party. Clara, your mother should be here. A shame her illness leaves her so debilitated. Clara felt her nails digging into her palm. My mother is exactly where she needs to be. Before Patricia could respond, Nathan intervened. If you'll excuse us, I'd love to dance with Clara. He guided her to the dance floor. When he took her in his arms, she was trembling. My aunt always knows where to twist the knife. She should apologize for being cruel to family. My mother was the youngest sister who married a poor man for love. When my father died, my aunt never stopped reminding her she'd chosen wrong. When did your father pass away? When I was 10. Construction accident. The company blamed his negligence, so no compensation. Mom cleaned houses to support us. Clara paused. That's why I became a cook in rich people's houses. Nathan looked at her intently. What did you really want to be? No one had ever asked that. A professional chef, she admitted. I dreamed of studying culinary arts, opening my own place. But dreams cost money. Dreams don't cost money. What costs is turning them into reality. Sometimes we just need the right opportunity. A voice made her stiffen. Well, look who showed up. Derek stood nearby, whiskey in hand. At 34, still attractive, but now Clara saw the cracks, the tense jaw, the calculating eyes, the smile that never reached his eyes. Derek, I don't remember inviting you. I don't need an invitation. Stephanie's my best friend. He stepped forward, ignoring Nathan. Who's this guy? Your charity project. Nathan positioned himself between them. I'm Nathan, Clara's boyfriend. My suit may not be expensive, but my personality doesn't compensate for insecurity. The silence was tense. People began watching. Listen, buddy, Derek lowered his voice. She and I have 3 years of history. You're just a pastime while she decides to come back. The story she told me is that you controlled her, isolated her from friends, made her believe she was nothing without you. That's not love, that's emotional abuse. Clara's knees threatened to give way. No one had ever defended her to Derek's face. Derek turned red. What did you say? You heard me. If you'll excuse us, my girlfriend and I will enjoy this party, on the opposite side. Derek looked ready to explode. His hands clenched. Then he noticed watching eyes, the awareness of being publicly judged. This isn't over, he hissed before stalking away. Clara exhaled. You shouldn't have done that. Better him furious than believing he has power over you. She looked at him with new eyes. Thank you, I don't know how to repay you. I'd love to try your cooking. After that risotto, I know you're incredible. Her smile was genuine. Deal. The rest of dinner went better than expected. Nathan adapted to any interlocutor. With older uncles, politics, with cousins, travels, with children, patient and fun. Your boyfriend is charming, whispered Stephanie during dessert. He looks at you like you're the only person here. Clara turned toward Nathan. As if sensing her gaze, he winked, a small smile curving his lips. And she realized something terrifying. She was beginning to feel something real for this man she'd met 2 days ago. This man who'd rescued her, defended her, looked at her as if she truly mattered. This man about whom she knew practically nothing true. The following weeks were like living inside a dream. Nathan appeared at the market near her work during lunch, bringing coffee and conversation. He called every night asking about her day, her mother's health. On weekends, walks in parks, small restaurants he'd researched to make her comfortable. Never expensive places, always where she could be herself. 3 weeks after the wedding, sharing ice cream in Clara's favorite park, she asked the question bothering her. Why never expensive restaurants? You earn well in imports. Money doesn't make experiences better. Some best meals I've had were in places without menus. The best company I've had in years is yours here with $2 ice cream. A perfect answer, but something stirred in Clara's mind. Nathan always paid cash, never cards. Never invited her to his apartment. Work calls seemed too important for a small company. One afternoon in the Whitmore kitchen, Clara heard Mrs. Whitmore on the phone, voice loud enough to hear. The merger with Mercer Holdings was finalized. Nathan Mercer is a business genius. Started from zero. Family was poor. Father died when he was a teenager. Now one of the richest men in the country. The knife slipped from Clara's fingers. Nathan Mercer. Not Nathan from imports. Nathan Mercer, CEO of Mercer Holdings. One of the richest men in the country. The same man who'd been in that kitchen closing a billion-dollar merger. Her hands trembled as pieces clicked together. That's why he never used cards. Never invited her to his apartment. Why calls seemed so important. Everything had been a lie. The man who'd promised honesty had been lying from the beginning. The billionaire disguised as an ordinary man. The man who kissed her like she was precious had deceived her about the most basic information, who he really was. Clara finished her shift on autopilot. At home, her mother waited with that perceptive look only mothers possess. What happened? You look terrible. Nathan isn't who he said. He's a billionaire, Mom, Nathan Mercer, owner of Mercer Holdings. Made me believe he was just an import employee. The silence was heavy. And that's bad. Why? Asked Dorothy, confused. He lied. Made me believe he was normal, that we had things in common. Doesn't he understand your life? You told me about his difficult childhood. Father who died in an accident like yours. Mother who cleaned houses. Was that a lie too? I don't know anymore. Dorothy held her daughter's hands. Has he ever treated you badly? No. Pressured you for something you didn't want? No. Made you feel inferior? No, Mom, but... Then hear his version before condemning him. Everyone has reasons, sometimes not what we imagine. Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks in silent rivers of pain. I can't look someone who lied to me in the eyes. Not again. Not after Derek. I trusted him completely and he betrayed me. Just like Derek did. Just like every man I've ever believed in. Dorothy sighed with the weariness of someone who has seen too much pain in life and understands its many forms intimately. My daughter, not every lie comes from the same place. Sometimes people hide things because they're afraid of losing something precious. Sometimes the truth feels too heavy to carry into a new relationship. That doesn't make it right, Mom. No, it doesn't. But it doesn't make it unforgivable either. The question you need to ask yourself is this. Did he lie to hurt you, or did he lie because he was scared? Those are very different things. Clara couldn't answer that question, didn't want to answer it. Every time she tried to think about Nathan's motivations, her mind automatically compared him to Derek, and the pain of that old betrayal mixed with this new one until she couldn't separate them anymore. They became one giant wound that throbbed constantly in her chest. That night, when Nathan's name lit up her phone screen for the first time, Clara stared at it until the ringing stopped. When he called again 10 minutes later, she silenced the phone and placed it face down on her nightstand. When a text message arrived, "Clara, please, I know you found out. Let me explain. I never meant to hurt you." She deleted it without responding. The flowers arrived the next morning. A beautiful bouquet of wildflowers just like the ones he'd brought to their first meeting. The card read simply, "Please let me explain. I'll wait as long as you need." Clara put the flowers in water because she couldn't bear to throw them away, but she didn't respond, didn't call back, didn't answer the door when he came by her apartment building 3 days later, and the doorman buzzed up to announce a visitor named Nathan. She told the doorman to send him away. Megan called daily, offering support, but also gentle challenges. "Are you sure you're not overreacting? He did save you at that wedding. He defended you against Derek when no one else ever had." "He lied, Megan. Everything was built on a lie." "Was it, though? From what you told me, the only thing he lied about was his job and his money. Everything else, the way he treated you, the things he said about understanding your life, that was all real. How can I trust that any of it was real when the foundation was false?" Megan didn't have an answer for that, and Clara took her silence as validation of her decision. A week passed. Then, too, Clara went through the motions of her life mechanically: work at the Whitmore mansion, home to care for her mother, sleep, repeat. The colors seemed to have drained from the world, leaving everything in shades of gray that matched her mood. She told herself she was fine, told herself she'd made the right decision, told herself that protecting her heart from another devastating betrayal was more important than taking a risk on someone who might hurt her again. But late at night, when the apartment was quiet and her mother was sleeping, Clara would sometimes take out her phone and scroll through the photos she'd taken during those 3 magical weeks with Nathan. Pictures of them at the park, screenshots of his thoughtful text messages, the selfie they'd taken at the wedding, both of them laughing at something she couldn't remember anymore. In those quiet moments, she allowed herself to wonder if her mother had been right, if there was a difference between Derek's manipulative deceptions and Nathan's fearful ones, if she was throwing away something real because she was too scared to take another chance. But then morning would come, and with it all the practical concerns of survival, and Clara would pack those doubts away with the photographs and go back to being fine, until the day everything changed. It started with a phone call at 6 in the morning. Megan's voice shaking in a way Clara had never heard before. "You need to come to the hospital now. It's your mother. It's serious." And just like that, everything Clara thought mattered stopped mattering at all. The terror that gripped her heart in that moment was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. Not the fear of Derek's manipulations, not the pain of Nathan's deception. This was primal, absolute, the kind of fear that strips away every pretense and leaves only the rawest human truth exposed. Her mother, her only family in this entire world, the woman who had sacrificed everything so that Clara could have a chance at life. Clara was out the door before Megan finished explaining what had happened. She didn't remember the taxi ride to the hospital, didn't remember running through the emergency room doors. The only thing she remembered was the look on the doctor's face when he finally came to speak with her. And in that moment, she knew that life was about to test her in ways she had never imagined possible. Clara burst through the emergency room doors with her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The harsh fluorescent light seemed to pulse in rhythm with her panic, as she frantically searched for someone who could tell her what had happened to her mother. The antiseptic smell of the hospital filled her nostrils, mixing with the metallic taste of fear that coated her tongue. "Dorothy Moreno," she gasped at the reception desk, barely able to form words. "She was brought in this morning. She's my mother. Please, I need to see her." The receptionist typed efficiently while Clara gripped the counter so tightly her knuckles turned white. After what felt like an eternity of agonizing waiting, she was directed to a small waiting room where Megan was already sitting, her face pale with worry and exhaustion. "What happened?" Clara demanded, grabbing her friend's hands. "Tell me everything." "A neighbor found her collapsed in the hallway this morning. She was unconscious, barely breathing. The paramedics said it was a severe diabetic crisis. Her blood sugar was dangerously high and her kidneys were failing. They stabilized her, but the doctors need to talk to you about treatment options. Clara sank into the plastic chair beside Megan, feeling as though the floor had opened beneath her. Her mother's diabetes had been a constant shadow over their lives for years, but it had been managed, controlled. This shouldn't have happened. How is this possible? She's been taking her medication, watching her diet, doing everything right. Sometimes the body just gives out, Megan said gently. Years of fighting take their toll. The doctors will explain everything. The wait for the doctor was the longest hour of Clara's entire life. She sat in that sterile waiting room, surrounded by other families wearing the same masks of fear and hope, and tried to prepare herself for whatever was coming. She thought about all the sacrifices her mother had made over the years, the cleaning jobs that destroyed her hands, the meals she skipped so Clara could eat, the dreams she abandoned so her daughter could have a chance at life. And Clara thought about how she had repaid those sacrifices, by working herself to exhaustion, by accepting less than she deserved, by pushing away the one person who had offered to help carry her burdens. When the doctor finally appeared, a tall man with kind eyes and grey temples, Clara stood up on legs that barely supported her weight. "Miss Moreno, I'm Dr. Williams. I've been treating your mother since she arrived. How is she? Can I see her? Is she going to be okay?" The doctor's expression was carefully neutral, the face of someone trained to deliver devastating news without breaking down. "Your mother is stable for now. We've managed to bring her blood sugar under control and she's conscious, but I need to be honest with you about the situation. Years of diabetes have severely damaged her kidneys. She's in acute kidney failure, and without intervention, the prognosis is not good." Clara felt the room tilt around her. What kind of intervention? She needs surgery, a specialized procedure to repair the kidney function before the damage becomes permanent. It's a complex operation, but we have an excellent surgeon on staff who specializes in exactly this type of case. Then do it, whatever she needs. Dr. Williams hesitated, and in that pause, Clara felt her last shred of hope begin to crumble. "The surgery is expensive, Miss Moreno. Our hospital requires payment arrangements before we can schedule the operation. Given the urgency of the situation, we would need a substantial deposit within the next few days." "How much?" When he said the number, Clara's world collapsed completely. $300,000. A sum so astronomical, it might as well have been 300 million. In her entire life, Clara had never seen that much money in one place, had never even imagined having access to anything close to it. There must be other options, she heard herself saying, as if from very far away. Payment plans, charity programs, something. "I can have our financial counselor speak with you about possibilities, but I want to be clear about the timeline. Every day we wait increases the risk of permanent damage. Your mother needs this surgery soon." Clara nodded mechanically, thanked the doctor, and asked to see her mother. As she walked through the hospital corridors toward Dorothy's room, she felt like a ghost, moving through a world that no longer made sense. Her mother looked so small in that hospital bed, so fragile. The machines surrounding her beeped and hummed, monitoring vital signs that had become precarious and uncertain. When Dorothy opened her eyes and saw Clara standing in the doorway, she managed a weak smile. "Don't look so scared, my daughter. I'm not dead yet." Clara crossed the room in 3 steps and took her mother's hand, careful not to disturb the IV line snaking into her thin arm. "You're going to be fine, Mom. They're going to do surgery and fix everything. You just need to rest and get strong. Surgery costs money we don't have. I'll figure something out. I always do." Dorothy squeezed her daughter's hand with surprising strength for someone who looked so fragile. "Clara, listen to me. I know you. You're going to run yourself ragged, trying to find money that doesn't exist. You're going to blame yourself for things that aren't your fault. But I need you to promise me something. Anything, Mom. Don't let pride destroy you. Don't let fear stop you from accepting help when it's offered. I spent my whole life being too proud to ask for anything, and look where it got me. In a hospital bed, watching my daughter carry burdens that should never have been hers alone." Clara blinked back tears. "I can handle it." "I know you can. But the question isn't whether you can handle it alone. The question is whether you have to." Before Clara could respond, a nurse came in to check Dorothy's vitals and administer medication. Clara stepped back to give her room to work, her mind already racing through possibilities and dead ends. She could sell everything she owned, and it wouldn't come close to enough. She could take out loans that would drown her in debt for decades. She could beg her family for help. Her family. The thought made her stomach turn, but desperation was a powerful motivator. Maybe, just maybe, if she humbled herself completely, they would help. After all, Dorothy was Patricia's sister. Surely blood meant something, even to someone as cold as her aunt. The next few days blurred together in a haze of hospital visits, desperate phone calls, and crushing disappointments. Clara took time off from the Whitmore mansion, explaining the emergency situation to her employers. They were sympathetic but distant, offering condolences without any concrete assistance. She visited her bank and learned that her credit history qualified her for a loan of exactly $12,000, a drop in a bucket that needed an ocean. She posted on community fundraising sites and watched the donations trickle in. $200 here, $50 there. People with their own struggles sharing what little they could spare. It touched her heart, but it wasn't going to be nearly enough. Finally, with no other options left, Clara made the call she had been dreading. She asked Aunt Patricia if they could meet to discuss an important family matter. Patricia agreed to see her at a cafe near the hospital. When Clara arrived, her aunt was already seated at a table by the window, sipping expensive coffee and scrolling through her phone with manicured fingers. She looked up when Clara approached, her expression a mixture of curiosity and condescension. "You look terrible," Patricia observed. "I heard about your mother, such a shame." Clara sat down across from her, swallowing the bitter response that rose to her lips. "Aunt Patricia, I need your help. Mom needs surgery to save her life, and it costs more money than I have any way of raising on my own. I'm asking you, as her sister, as family, to please help us." Patricia set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "And how much are we talking about?" When Clara told her the amount, Patricia's eyebrows rose, but her expression didn't change. "That's quite a substantial sum." "I know. I wouldn't be asking if there were any other way. I've tried everything else. Have you considered that perhaps this is simply how things are meant to be? Your mother made her choices in life. She chose to marry your father instead of someone with means. She chose to stay in poverty rather than accept help from family when it was offered with conditions." "What conditions?" Patricia smiled coldly. "When your father died, I offered to help your mother financially. All she had to do was admit that she'd made a mistake, that marrying for love instead of security had been foolish. She refused, said she'd rather starve than dishonor your father's memory." Clara felt rage building in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. Her mother's life depended on this conversation. That was decades ago. Things are different now. "Mom's dying, Aunt Patricia. Your own sister is lying in a hospital bed dying, and you're talking about old grudges. I'm talking about principles. Choices have consequences. Your mother chose pride over practicality, and now she's paying the price. Just as you chose to reject a perfectly good match in Derek and parade around with some nobody at Stephanie's wedding. This isn't about Derek or the wedding. This is about saving a life." Patricia picked up her coffee again, took a long sip, and then delivered the blow that Clara had somehow known was coming. "I'm sorry, but I won't be helping. Your mother made her bed, and now she must lie in it. Perhaps if you had stayed with Derek, you'd have someone with resources to turn to now. As it stands, you've chosen your path and I've chosen mine." Clara stood up from the table, her entire body trembling with a combination of fury and despair. "You're going to let your own sister die over a grudge from 30 years ago? I'm going to let natural consequences play out. There's a difference. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have appointments." Clara left that cafe feeling more alone than she ever had in her entire life. The sun was shining. People were walking by laughing and living their normal lives, and her mother was going to die because the world was cruel and unfair, and there was no one left to turn to. She walked aimlessly for what felt like hours, ending up eventually at the small park where she and Nathan had shared ice cream. The bench where they'd sat was empty, and Clara collapsed onto it, finally letting the tears flow that she'd been holding back for days. She cried for her mother, for herself, for the injustice of a world where money determined who lived and who died, for all the dreams that would never come true, and all the chances that had slipped through her fingers. And somewhere in the depths of her despair, she thought about Nathan, about his offer of help that she had rejected, about his texts and calls that she had ignored, about the man who had defended her, who had looked at her like she mattered, who had lied about who he was but had never lied about how he felt. Was it too late to reach out? Would he even want to help after how she had treated him? And if he did help, what would it mean? Would she be selling herself for money, just like her aunt had suggested her mother should have done all those years ago? Clara didn't have answers to any of these questions. All she had was her mother's voice echoing in her mind. Don't let pride destroy you. Don't let fear stop you from accepting help when it's offered. But she couldn't. She just couldn't. After Derek, after everything, the thought of being beholden to another man, even one who seemed good, felt like stepping back into a cage she had fought so hard to escape. So she dried her tears, stood up from the bench and went back to the hospital to sit with her mother, to hold her hand and pretend that everything would somehow be okay, even though she had no idea how that could possibly be true. She had reached the absolute end of her rope, and she was completely out of options, or so she thought. 3 days after Clara's devastating meeting with Aunt Patricia, the fundraising total stood at exactly $4,217. Clara had counted it that morning, sitting at the small kitchen table in the apartment that felt oppressively empty without her mother's presence filling it with warmth and life. $4,000 against a mountain of $300,000. It was like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon, and the futility of it pressed down on her chest like a physical weight. She had worked herself to complete exhaustion, trying every possible avenue, called every organization that might offer assistance, only to be told she didn't qualify or that waiting lists stretched for months, filled out forms for programs that would take weeks to process, time her mother simply didn't have. Even considered selling her mother's small gold wedding band, the only valuable thing Dorothy owned, before realizing with crushing despair that it wouldn't make a meaningful difference anyway. Maybe a few $100s for a lifetime of love and memories. Not nearly enough to matter. The hospital bills were already mounting. Each day of her mother's stay added more numbers to the total, and the surgery date kept getting pushed back, as administrators waited for payment arrangements that Clara couldn't make. She had stopped sleeping properly, stopped eating full meals, stopped doing anything except frantically searching for money that didn't exist in her small world. Megan showed up at the hospital waiting room that afternoon with coffee and a look of determination that Clara recognized immediately. It was the same expression her best friend wore when she had decided to do something that Clara wouldn't like, but desperately needed anyway. The expression that preceded uncomfortable truths and difficult interventions. Before you say anything, Megan started, handing over the coffee cup with unusual gentleness, I need you to listen to me completely without interrupting. Promise me you'll hear the whole thing before you react. This is important. That's never a good opening to a conversation. Clara, I contacted Nathan. The coffee cup froze halfway to Clara's lips. For a moment, she couldn't process what Megan had said. The words seemed to hang in the air between them, impossible and inevitable at the same time, refusing to make sense no matter how many times her brain tried to interpret them. Nathan. She hadn't allowed herself to think his name in days, had pushed every memory of him into a locked box in the back of her mind. You did what? I contacted Nathan Mercer. Found the phone number for his company online within 30 seconds because that's how easy it was. Left a detailed message with his executive assistant explaining the situation with your mother. Explaining everything. He called me back within an hour, Clara. Within a single hour. A billionaire CEO dropped whatever incredibly important thing he was doing to call me back about you. Clara set the coffee down on the table beside her with shaking hands, afraid she would spill it everywhere. You had no right to do that, Megan. No right at all to go behind my back. I had every right in the world. I've watched you run yourself into the ground for a week, trying to find money that doesn't exist. I've watched you beg your horrible aunt and get rejected without an ounce of compassion or human decency. I've watched you skip meals and lose sleep and refuse to ask for help from the one person who actually offered it without hesitation. Someone had to do something, and since you were too stubborn and too scared to do it yourself, it had to be me. What did he say? Megan's expression softened, her righteous anger fading into something gentler and more compassionate. He said he would take care of everything. Surgery, hospital stay, recovery, medications, follow-up care, all of it. Every single expense covered completely. No conditions, no strings attached, nothing at all expected in return. He just asked me to tell you one thing. Clara waited, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her temples, in her throat, in her fingertips. He said that he knows you're angry with him, and you have every right to be. He said that he should have told you the truth from the beginning, but he was terrified, afraid that if you knew who he really was, You would treat him differently, look at him differently. See dollar signs instead of a person. Megan paused, her voice growing quieter with emotion. He told me about his ex-wife, about how she married him when he was still building his company, still struggling, still nobody important, and how she completely changed when the money started flowing in. How she only stayed for the lifestyle, for the status, for what his success could give her. How she left him feeling like nothing he actually was as a person could ever be enough for anyone. Clara felt something crack inside her chest, a wall she had built beginning to crumble. He said he spent years after the divorce wondering if anyone would ever be capable of loving him for who he was instead of what he had. And when he met you crying in that kitchen, looking at him without any recognition or expectation or calculation, he wanted to hold on to that feeling for as long as humanly possible. He knew it was wrong, knew he should tell you the truth, but every time he tried to form the words, he was absolutely terrified of seeing that look in your eyes, the look that said he wasn't Nathan anymore. He was just money, just a walking opportunity. The tears came before Clara could stop them. She sat in that hard plastic hospital chair and cried while Megan held her hand tightly, and somewhere across the city, a man she had rejected and ignored was saving her mother's life without asking for anything in return. Why would he do this, Clara whispered through her tears, after how I treated him? After ignoring his calls and refusing to see him? After shutting him out so completely and coldly? Because he loves you, Clara. That's not complicated at all. It's actually the simplest thing in the world. He loves you, and love doesn't come with conditions when it's real. It doesn't keep score, it doesn't demand repayment. It just gives because giving is what it knows how to do. The surgery was scheduled for the following morning. Dr. Williams came personally to explain that all arrangements had been made by an anonymous benefactor, that the hospital's very best surgeon would be performing the procedure, and that Clara's mother would receive the finest care available anywhere. His entire demeanor had transformed from their earlier conversations. Now he spoke with genuine optimism, with real hope that had been absent before. Dorothy, when told about the anonymous payment covering everything, looked at her daughter with knowing eyes that seemed to see straight through all pretense and denial. "It was him, wasn't it, your young man?" "He's not my young man, Mom, not anymore, maybe not ever again. But he paid for my surgery. All of it, every penny, from what I understand." "Apparently he did." Dorothy reached out and took Clara's hand with gentle but insistent pressure that demanded attention. "Then perhaps you should reconsider who he is to you. A man who does something like this without being asked, without expecting anything back, without even wanting you to know it was him, that's not a common thing in this world. That's not something most people ever find in their entire lives. He lied to me. About his job, about his money. Did he lie about caring for you? Did he lie when he defended you against Derek in front of everyone? Did he lie when he looked at you like you were the center of his universe?" Clara didn't have an answer to that. The surgery lasted 6 grueling hours. Clara sat in the waiting room the entire time, refusing Megan's repeated offers to get food, or take a walk, or even just stretch her aching legs. She couldn't eat, couldn't move, could only sit there and pray to whatever forces governed the universe that her mother would survive, that the surgery would work, that she wouldn't be left completely alone. When Dr. Williams finally emerged, still in his surgical scrubs with exhaustion written across his kind face, Clara stood up so fast she felt dizzy. "The surgery was successful," he said, and Clara nearly collapsed with overwhelming relief. "We were able to repair the kidney function. The damage was extensive, but we caught it in time. Your mother will need a lengthy recovery period, but she's going to be okay." Clara hugged him. It was completely inappropriate professional behavior, and she didn't care at all. She hugged the man who had saved her mother's life and sobbed with gratitude while he patted her back awkwardly. When Clara finally entered the recovery room, her mother was pale but smiling. "Stop looking at me like I'm a ghost," Dorothy said weakly. "I told you I wasn't dead yet." Clara sat beside the bed. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been turned inside out but alive." Dorothy's eyes focused on her daughter. "Now about that young man." "Mom, you just had surgery, which he paid for, after you ignored him." Dorothy's voice was weak but sharp. "Clara, I've watched you guard your heart since Derek, but Nathan, he's not Derek. He lied. So you keep saying. But did Derek ever defend you? Look at you like you mattered? Help without expecting something?" Clara was silent. "Derek took from you. Nathan gave. He gave protection, confidence, the chance to be seen. And now he's given me my life. Clara stayed until visiting hours ended, then walked into the cool night air. The city sparkled around her, indifferent to her inner turmoil, and she stood on the sidewalk trying to figure out what to do next. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket. Nathan's number was still saved, still waiting. All she had to do was call. But her feet carried her not toward home, but toward the small restaurant where she and Nathan had eaten together during those 3 magical weeks. The place where they had shared laughter and stories, and the beginning of something that might have been beautiful if she hadn't been so afraid. The restaurant was closed at this late hour, but through the window Clara could see the table in the corner where they always sat. She stood outside in the darkness, remembering every conversation they had shared there, the way he always pulled out her chair, the way he listened to her stories about work as if they were the most fascinating things he had ever heard, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed at her jokes. She thought about everything she now knew about Nathan, the difficult childhood that mirrored her own in so many ways, the mother who had cleaned houses just like Dorothy, working her fingers to the bone to give her son a chance. The father lost too young to an accident, just like her own father had been taken. The marriage that had shattered his ability to trust, just like Derek had shattered hers. They were the same, she realized with sudden clarity, both wounded by past betrayals that had cut deep into their souls, both afraid to let anyone close enough to hurt them again, both hiding behind walls built from accumulated pain and disappointment. Nathan had hidden behind his false identity, afraid that showing his true wealthy self would drive authentic people away or attract the wrong people for the wrong reasons. And Clara had hidden behind her anger and her pride, afraid that forgiveness would make her vulnerable to being devastated all over again. But hiding hadn't protected either of them from anything. It had only kept them apart, only prevented them from finding the very thing they both desperately needed, genuine human connection with someone who understood their particular kind of loneliness. Clara took out her phone and looked at it for a long moment in the darkness. The screen glowed softly, waiting for her to make a choice that would determine the direction of her entire life. She could call Nathan right now, could tell him thank you for saving her mother, could ask if it was too late to start again, to try building something real on a foundation of truth this time. Nathan arrived at the restaurant within 20 minutes. Clara watched through the window as he parked and got out of his car, and even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the uncertainty in his walk. He wasn't the confident billionaire CEO now. He was just a man hoping desperately that the woman he loved would give him a chance to explain. When he saw her standing outside the closed restaurant, he stopped a few feet away, as if afraid to come closer without permission. "Thank you for calling," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure I would ever hear your voice again. Thank you for saving my mother's life. You don't need to thank me for that. I would have done it regardless of anything between us. She matters to you, which means she matters to me." Clara felt tears prickling at her eyes again. She had cried more in the past week than she had in the past year, but something about this man seemed to unlock every emotion she had ever tried to suppress. "Can we sit somewhere? I think we have a lot to talk about." They found a bench in the small park across the street, the same park where they had shared ice cream weeks ago. The city was quiet around them, the late hour keeping most people indoors, and the privacy felt appropriate for the conversation they were about to have. "I need you to understand something," Clara started, turning to face him on the bench. "When I found out who you really were, it wasn't just the lie that hurt me. It was what that lie seemed to say about how you saw me." Nathan's expression was pained. "What do you mean?" "You pretended to be ordinary because you assumed I would treat you differently if I knew you were wealthy. You assumed I would become like your ex-wife, that I would suddenly see you as a meal ticket instead of a person. But Nathan, that assumption meant you never really trusted me. You looked at me and saw all the women who had hurt you before, instead of seeing who I actually am." The words hung between them, heavy with truth that neither had spoken until now. "You're right," Nathan said finally, "and I'm sorry. I was so afraid of being hurt again that I hurt you instead. I convinced myself I was protecting both of us, but really, I was just being a coward. Why didn't you tell me? After the wedding, when things between us started becoming real, why didn't you trust me with the truth? Because by then, I was terrified of losing you." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration Clara had never seen from him before. "Every day that passed made the lie bigger. I kept telling myself I would tell you tomorrow next week when the time was right. But the right time never came because I was too scared to risk what we were building. What we were building was founded on a lie. Not all of it, not the important parts. Nathan turned to face her fully, his eyes intense with emotion. Clara, I lied about my name and my job, but I never lied about anything that mattered. Every conversation we had was real. Every moment we shared was genuine. The way I feel about you, the way I've felt since that first night in the kitchen, that was never a performance. How am I supposed to know the difference? How am I supposed to trust anything you've told me when the foundation was false? Nathan was quiet for a long moment, clearly choosing his words carefully. You asked me once what parts of what I told you were true. I want to answer that fully now, without any more hiding. He took a deep breath. My father really did die in a construction accident when I was 14. The company really did blame him to avoid paying compensation. My mother really did clean houses to support us, working 16-hour days until her hands bled, never complaining, never giving up. Clara listened, feeling the parallel stories of their lives intertwining. Everything I told you about my childhood was true, the hunger, the shame, the feeling of being invisible to people who had more than us. I know what it's like to be looked at like you're less than human just because of where you come from. Nathan's voice cracked slightly. The only lie was what came after. The success, the money, the company I built from nothing. I hid those things because they become walls that keep people from seeing me clearly. Why would success be something you need to hide? Because once people know you have money, everything changes. Every relationship becomes transactional. Every smile becomes suspicious. You stop knowing if anyone actually likes you or just likes what you can give them. Nathan looked at her with vulnerability she had never seen before. When Valentina left me, she took more than half my assets. But that wasn't what destroyed me. What destroyed me was realizing I had never been anything to her but a bank account with a pulse. 3 years of marriage, and she was just waiting for the right moment to cash out. Clara understood that kind of betrayal. Derek had taken different things from her, confidence instead of money, but the wound was similar. The feeling of having given yourself to someone who was never really there. The night I met you, Nathan continued, I was exhausted. Exhausted from meetings where everyone wanted something. Exhausted from smiling at people who were calculating my net worth while shaking my hand. I walked into that kitchen looking for water, and I found you instead, crying, human, real. And when you looked at me, you didn't see Nathan Mercer, CEO. You just saw a man. I saw a man who offered to help a complete stranger for no apparent reason. That seemed suspicious to me then, and it still seems that way now. It wasn't no reason. It was the best reason I've had to do anything in years. Nathan reached out, hesitating before gently taking her hand. I saw someone who deserved kindness and wasn't getting it. Someone whose strength reminded me of my mother, of everyone I grew up with who worked twice as hard for half as much and never complained. I wanted to help you because helping you felt like becoming human again after years of feeling like nothing but a number on a balance sheet. They sat in silence for a while, hands intertwined, the weight of everything spoken and unspoken settling around them. My mother said something to me, Clara finally said. She asked whether you lied to hurt me or because you were scared. She said those are very different things. Your mother is wise. She's been through enough to understand that people are complicated. That good people sometimes do bad things for understandable reasons. Does that mean you understand? Or does it just mean you're explaining why understanding is possible? Clara looked at this man who had deceived her and defended her, who had hidden his wealth and used it to save her mother, who had been both coward and hero in equal measure. She thought about Derek, who had lied constantly but always for his own benefit. Nathan's lie had been different, misguided, hurtful, but ultimately born from fear rather than malice. I'm not ready to forgive completely, she said honestly. Trust has to be rebuilt, and that takes time. But I'm willing to try if you are. No more secrets, no more hiding who you really are. If we're going to do this, we do it as equals, not the billionaire and the cook, just Nathan and Clara. The relief on his face was so profound that Clara felt her remaining anger begin to dissolve. I would like nothing more than that. And I want you to know I'm not expecting anything in return for helping your mother. That money comes with no strings, no obligations, no expectations. Whatever happens between us, that was a gift freely given. I know. If you had wanted to buy my affection, you would have made sure I knew who paid. The fact that you tried to stay anonymous told me everything I needed to know about why you did it. They talked for hours after that, real talk without pretense or performance. Nathan told her about his company, his fears, his hopes for the future. Clara told him about her dream of owning a restaurant, about the culinary school she had never been able to afford, about all the recipes she had created over years of cooking for others while imagining cooking for herself. When the sun began to rise over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they were still sitting on that bench, closer now, her head resting on his shoulder. "I want to help with your restaurant dream," Nathan said softly. "Not because I'm trying to buy anything, but because you have a gift that deserves to be shared with the world, and I happen to have resources that could help make that happen." "That's a big conversation for another day." "Agreed. But I wanted you to know that it's on the table, whenever you're ready." The months that followed were a gradual rebuilding. Nathan met Dorothy properly when she was released from the hospital, enduring a gentle but firm lecture about honesty before being welcomed into the family with tears and gratitude. Megan continued her protective vigilance, though her threats became more affectionate over time. There were difficult moments, arguments about boundaries and expectations, discussions about what Clara was willing to accept and what felt too much like charity. Nathan learned to respect her pride and her need for independence. Clara learned to accept help without feeling diminished by it. A year after that first night at the wedding, Nathan took Clara to an empty commercial space in the heart of the city, a space with a professional kitchen, a space that looked exactly like everything she had ever dreamed about. "It's yours if you want it. An investment in the most talented chef I've ever known." Clara looked at the space that represented all her abandoned dreams. "I can't accept this." "Then don't accept it as a gift. Accept it as a business partnership. You bring the talent and the vision, I bring the capital. We split the profits fairly." She laughed through tears. "You're relentless." "Only when it comes to things that matter." Nathan pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a ring with an emerald surrounded by diamonds, the green matching the dress she had worn to Stephanie's wedding all those months ago. "Clara Moreno, will you marry me? Not because of what I can give you materially, not because I saved your mother or offered you a restaurant, but because I love you more than I've ever loved anyone, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you." "Yes. 1,000 times yes." The wedding was small, held in a garden with Dorothy in the front row crying with joy. Megan served as maid of honor. Neither Derek nor Aunt Patricia received invitations. 2 years later, Clara's restaurant had become one of the most acclaimed in the city. Not the most expensive or luxurious, but beloved for food that tasted like love and dedication. Critics praised the authenticity. Regular customers felt like family. And every night when the restaurant closed, Clara and Nathan sat in the empty kitchen sharing wine and gratitude. "You know what's incredible?" Clara asked one evening. "This all started because I needed a boyfriend by tomorrow." Nathan took her hand. "The best decision I ever made was choosing to be that boyfriend, even knowing everything that would come after. Especially knowing, because real love isn't easy, it's work and commitment and choosing each other every day. But when you find the right person, all that work becomes joy." Clara kissed him, thinking about the journey that brought them here, about desperate prayers answered in unexpected ways, about walls built from fear and the courage required to tear them down, about two wounded people who found healing in each other. If this story touched something inside you, leave a comment. Sometimes naming what we feel changes more than we imagine. Your comment may help someone who's silently struggling today.